I built a Chrome extension in one day without writing a single line of code that completely changes the way that I use ChatGPT and Claude. It lets me write perfect prompts in seconds and helps me queue up a series of prompts that I can run on autopilot. And it also lets me store my favorite and most useful prompts in a personal library that I can use at any time. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can quickly create Chrome extensions to add missing features to apps you use every single day without having to wait on the company themselves or having to hire a developer. And these skills are not just about improving ChatGPT and Claude. By following the framework and prompting strategy I'm about to show you, you'll be able to unlock tons of possibilities through building your own Chrome extensions to address your everyday needs. If I've piqued your interest, let's get into it. Alright, so when I open my ChatGPT, you'll notice that I have a different icon here than you would have on your end. And the same thing with Claude, except it's located in a different spot. So you can see it's right here. And what happens is when I click on this modal, we'll get a pop-up that gives us a series of options. One, to create a prompt, and two, to actually queue up a series of prompts to auto-send on our behalf. So if we click here, you'll see we have the AI prompt assistant, which will allow us to put a semi-detailed prompt or even a vague prompt and have it spit out a much better and much more refined version. And if you want to change and control which model is taking care of this, we can choose something like O3 Mini, which is a cheaper reasoning model. We can even show the system prompt, and this is what it is by default. So it says, you are a prompt engineer. Your job is to create optimized prompts for ChatGPT based on user requests. Always respond only with the prompt itself, nothing else. Do not explain, do not have a conversation, just output the final prompt that should be given to, or sent rather, to ChatGPT. Make it a much more detailed version of the prompt I give you. Now you can configure this yourself and it will send every time, and it will actually save the preferences of this prompt in your browser itself. So what we can do is hide the system prompt and then enter a very basic prompt here. Write me a haiku that will talk about AI. And then we'll send this over. We can click on generate prompt to make this slightly more verbose and more detailed. So now it'll say, write a traditional Japanese haiku that explores the concept of AI, capturing its essence, impact, or potential in 3 lines with a 5-7-5 syllable structure. Now, if you just said haiku, the AI would probably understand and know what it is, but just in case it made it more detailed. And you can click on Save to Library here, which will allow you to actually see everything that you've stored over time. And you can clear them all if you wish, and you can also send and delete these individual prompts from your library. And once we click out of that, we can now click the second button here, which is the magic button, Add to Queue. And then we can create one more prompt. And we can add as many as we want, but we'll say here, translate to French. And then if I click on this magical button, you'll see what happens. So when I click this, it will inject the first prompt, wait for the response of the first prompt, then inject the second prompt, hands off, you can see me not moving, and then it should put the second one right here, and then auto send that as well. And there you go. So now you could have queued up 3, 4, 5 prompts, went and grabbed a coffee, and came back to a series of chain prompts executed on your behalf. And this also works in Claude. And Claude is interesting because the interface is different, where it shows you this big landing page at the beginning, and then it transitions to a chat interface, which is very relevant for the obstacles in building something like this. And the extension works the exact same way in Claude. So if we click on here and enter something like, let's use this star feature that will allow us to actually create and generate a prompt as already a queued prompt. We'll say something like, write a deep sentence on society. Then click on OK. It will generate that for us. We'll add another one. I'll say, make the sentence you wrote even more deep. And then I'll click OK. Same thing. We'll start the queue, and this time it will inject it for the first one, wait for the response, and then inject the second one. You can see prompt 1 of 2 is completed. It now knows to inject the second prompt and send over the second prompt. You can still see my hands, they're not moving. That was all done automatically. Now, is the app perfect? No. Sometimes it struggles when there's very long responses that take a few minutes, and then it tries to auto-inject ahead of time. But that's one thing I'm going to continue building on. So vibe coding is not perfect, but you can get to the 80% within a day or two if you know what you're doing. Now, whether you're technical or non-technical, I'll walk through at a very high level, conceptually, all the different pieces that had to fall into place for this to work at least the way it is right now. And after that walkthrough, I'll break down a mega prompt that I put together by doing reverse meta prompting, which is fancy words for saying I had a 7-hour session with something called Cursor that I then asked, hey, can you summarize every single back and forth we had every single time you made a mistake and I corrected you, and every single change we made into one very big prompt so that if I wanted to make this app again, it would be a lot easier. And this will help you cheat time, and I'll walk you through conceptually what it's doing, what it's recommending, and why. So now we'll take a bird's eye view of the entire process as a series of different elements that need to come together. So if we zoom into the very first one, you have to tell whatever vibe coding tool or development tool you're working with where the actual extension should work. And when I say where, I mean literally the URL where it should work. If you just say ChatGPT, it might mistake the old domain of ChatGPT, which has been updated since 2023, when a lot of these language models were last updated. You have to be intentional in saying things like chatgpt.com, chat.ai, Claude, Claude AI, and give it a list of URLs where it should appear. This originally led to the first of many mistakes I made, where I assumed that it knew exactly what ChatGPT was, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get the Chrome extension to appear on that page. The next part here is finding the right part of the page to actually inject some form of icon to act as our modal. And the tricky part here is if I wanted to make this not just work on ChatGPT, but Claude, the way I approached where this should appear, how it should function, where it should appear after we actually send the request was the tricky part. So just to give some more color, when I send the request to ChatGPT and then we submit it for the first time, this little voice icon turns into a stop sign or a stop icon to stop the generation, and then it goes back to an arrow to submit again. So that's one little behavior we had to observe. Another thing is as soon as we're out of this box landing page, it then goes into chat mode. On the Claude side, it is a bit similar, although obviously what's on the left-hand side is different. We don't have custom GPTs, we have projects, we have different elements on the page. Let's say settings is here, instead of on ChatGPT, settings is here. And while this might seem like over details or over specifying, you have to fully understand where this icon is going to live because you don't want it to clash with other areas. So if I wanted to add additional Chrome extensions other than this MCP one, it would become very jumbled in this left-hand side. So then I resorted to putting it here. Whereas with Claude, I didn't have that problem. So I could just place it right here, nice and tidy, not too far from the research button. Now this next part was a bit of a nightmare because you not only have to type, but you have to also understand the behavior of both platforms. On ChatGPT, when I enter text immediately, it gives me the option to send. This little voice icon disappears. So finding the easiest ways to anchor the behavior based on what's on the screen at any one time was really important. Just to give some more color to this, if we leave the browser, go into ChatGPT, and I click on the right-hand side of my browser, go to More Tools, and then Developer Tools, you'll see that if I zoom in a bit, we have a series of logs that I've asked the AI tool to create so I can see what it thinks it did successfully. So in this case, it says button injected successfully, meaning it successfully put this on the page. And then navigation or interface change detected, reinitializing. So once we send a message, it knows to look for different parts of the user interface to track what's happening. Now, why am I telling you this? When we go and send a message to ChatGPT, let's say hi, you can see right away this icon changed. So how can we, if we want to enable the prompt queuing function, enable it so that it knows, in air quotes, when to send the message? Well, when we send this message, now we get a little stop icon that goes into a voice icon right after. So can the change in that button help us create an anchor for when we should inject this second prompt? And it seems very mechanical, but as you go deeper and deeper to try to understand the page behavior, to hack your way to a functionality, looking for these nuances helps you help it to do a better job. Now this next element I alluded to before, which is we wanted to be able to inject that icon on the right part of the page consistently and have it there no matter what. And the reason why I say no matter what is if we go into, and I know I keep switching around, but it's worth it to understand, if I go from creating a new chat this way to having a conversation and I want to create a new chat again, sometimes when you create a new chat by going through this pathway or this segue versus opening a brand new session of ChatGPT in another tab are two different ways for the icon to be triggered to actually reveal itself. So initially, I only had this here, and if I didn't do a hard refresh or open a brand new page, it didn't appear again. So if I tried to create a chat through this icon right here, new chat, it wouldn't work anymore. So these are things that are iterative, and as you see the behavior of your Chrome extension across different pages or different sub-pages, that's where you have to accommodate and make up for that. The next one is handling timing and delays naturally. So like I said before, one bug that I'm working on fixing before this is production ready is having it wait long enough and use elements on the screen to know when it's time to actually inject the next prompt before prematurely sending it over. Because if the language model is still in the process of generating, then it will get lost, it will try to send or inject the next prompt, it won't send, then it'll go through a bunch of errors. And like I said before, it has to understand what happens after the first message. So on ChatGPT, we saw that icon goes from an arrow to a stop sign. Same thing on Claude side, it does have a version of an arrow and a version of that stop sign, but it looks slightly different. And it's called very differently in terms of the structure of the HTML, CSS, yada, yada, yada. So accounting for those nuances allows us to build for both. Now, expert tip here is if you're building an extension that you want to live on multiple sites, try to only optimize for one site, get it working, and once it's working, then transition to the next one. Because you're kind of fighting a battle on two fronts, if you're trying to make it work at all, in general, and then make it work on those functions or platforms alone. The next part here is triggering the right actions at the right time. And that doesn't just have to do with the queuing, but also the generation of the prompt. So initially when I created the AI prompt assistant, it would output the resulting prompt in one of the text boxes below, not the main text box that literally had an entire section dedicated for it. So understanding not only that, but when I created the prompt library that allows you to save those prompts to your own browser, then I had to make sure that when I trigger it or click on it, the pop-up appears ahead of the main pop-up. But what was happening was initially it would appear behind the pop-up, meaning I physically couldn't access it. So these are also nuances that will pop up no matter how good you are at prompt engineering, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with a language model. You're not dealing with genuine super intelligence, at least not yet. And this next one, I haven't fully figured out 100%, but by the time you watch this video, I will probably have improved it a lot, which is finding better and better ways to detect when we have received a response, especially if we're doing something like a research function or deep research. Can we make it so that it can actually wait 45 minutes and then paste the next injected prompt? Or is that something that's too difficult right now? And that goes hand in hand with this one because the timing and delays will have to interlink with knowing when the AI has finished responding. So these two are paired together. And everything I mentioned right now is the 80%. This is the final 20%, which is making it robust and resilient. And how you do that is you have to battle test it, meaning you try deep research. You try using functions with extended thinking. So right now on Claude, if I write something like generate a detailed outline, on Sonnet, this will work fine. When I do Opus, it can sometimes work fine. If I enable extended thinking, then it never works because it takes way too long and eventually times out. So these are examples of how you take something that is in alpha, and then you get to beta, and then you get to production level. But that last part will typically take a while and a lot of battle testing. Now, in terms of bringing this to life, you have tons of options. You could theoretically use ChatGPT in something like O3 and ask it to consistently output a zip file that you can download and import into Chrome. Totally an option. I just don't find it the most robust option. So even if you're not technical, looking at these logos, I promise you, this is doable in natural language without writing a line of code or seeing too many things that scare you. So just stick with me and I will show you at the very end of the video how we can apply the prompt I'm about to show you and apply it in this environment so it can start setting it up. It can create a folder for you. And all you have to do is once you hook it up to Chrome extension, you can just click refresh every single time you make a change, and it will make this workflow a lot faster, and you can iterate a lot faster, which is the most important thing. So again, if you're not technical, please don't click off. You're gonna learn a lot, so just stick with me. So like I said before, I took an entire set of hundreds of messages between myself and Cursor and asked at the very end, in ask mode, to create a prompt to summarize every single thing that we created together. And you'll notice that each section here lines up with every image that I walked you through in that mirror board. So we'll just walk through, not read the whole prompt. I'll just give you a general idea of what's happening and in plain English, why we're asking that of the AI program. So if we start here, we first have target URLs and domains. So again, we have to tell it where we expect this extension to pop up. So all the permutations of ChatGPT. And by the way, this little icon here, this asterisk, is very helpful because when you create a new chat, if you go back to it, that chat will get some form of ID. So this asterisk acts as a proxy for whatever comes after this main URL. Then we have the same thing here for Claude, as well as subdomains or subpages of Claude as well. And you'll notice we have these little placeholders for the asterisk here and here to accommodate for the fact that we might have different characters before and after that main domain. And then I emphasize that it has to work on landing pages, chat interfaces, and conversation pages, handle navigation between different conversation threads, support authenticated and unauthenticated states, meaning if you go to Claude and you haven't logged in, or you go to ChatGPT and you aren't logged in, it should still appear, which again feels like something that is common sense, but there is no common sense when you're dealing with language models. For the most part, you have to spoon feed or dog food the common sense yourself. Now this next part is very important, but also very gibberishy. So the TLDR of this entire set of code, pretty much, and this reference to DOM, it's basically a reference to the structure and behavior of the underlying web page, is that it knows where you type, where the send button is, and where the answers show up. So here I'm giving it a cheat sheet of where to expect these things, and how did it learn that, or how did I learn to tell it that? Basically, I would go on ChatGPT or Claude, go on Developer Tools, and then click on this little icon here, and then I would navigate the page to start to detect every element. So you can see this is the icon on the button, but here's the button. And this code is what represents that button. So if I right-click that code and click on copy and copy element, and I feed this, over time, I start trying to give as many clues as possible for exactly what we're going for, what we should target, or where we should, quote unquote, inject certain components, let's say the prompt. So that helps us quite a bit, and that's how we learned a lot of these. And this acts as a good segue to the next part, which is the injection points, where in plain English, the tool picks the right spot next to chat that controls to add its own button, so it fits neatly and doesn't break anything, which it broke things multiple times. Initially, if we go back to ChatGPT, this icon lived here, and then as I transitioned from change to change, eventually it was right on top of tools, meaning you could neither click this nor click on tools, making this a less functional version of ChatGPT, not a more functional version. And then this side is identical. This is just for Claude, so exactly how those input fields and buttons look like. And then the typing area for Claude will look differently, or is coded differently, naturally. This page is not the same thing as this page. So given that, there's going to be different underlying code, different references that we have to target for those buttons. And this next part also refers to where the button should show up in Claude as well. And initially, I noticed that when I went to enter a prompt and I said something like hi, this icon would disappear and it would go to the top left, right on top of untitled, where the actual name of the chat goes. And this was only something that I could observe and understand through looking at the behavior. And eventually, I lost my ability of articulating that into words. So what I did is, I actually recorded a loom of the behavior, and then I went to something like AI Studio, Google, because it can take video. I downloaded my loom video, I uploaded it here, and I said, can you please put into words what is happening, what behavior is happening when I'm using this Chrome extension? I'm trying to give feedback to my other AI agent on what it should change in my Chrome extension code. So then, after a few iterations with that new knowledge, I was able to iron it out so that we always have it here, no matter what happens to the conversation thread. So this next part also regulates how the buttons are clicked and what happens to those buttons when they are clicked. You'll see the reference here is it carefully inserts itself after the tools button, tries backup spots if needed, and always has a float mode as a last resort in case it can't properly fit the button. And then this extra detail is it types your text and clicks send the way each side expects, so your messages go through like a real user typed them, no weird glitches. Now obviously once we get to a place where computer use or operator is good enough, a lot of this Chrome extension would be automated in its main functionality, but up until we get to that point, it's pretty useful to be able to build these things yourself. So this next part is the part that needs a bit of work, which is the response completion detection, and basically it goes through when it should detect the message is completed for the first prompt before it writes the second prompt. So in plain English, the tool waits for clear signs like read aloud buttons, stop buttons disappearing, or steady text before doing the next thing, so it never rushes or breaks. And again, this is super hacky. If you are an expert developer, you're probably scuffing right now. And again, this is a very hacky way, especially if the underlying website changes, I would have to accommodate for that. But I wanted to push things and see how far I could go without writing or intervening with the line of code myself. And on that hackiness, we have those two elements we referred to before, which is the timing specifications and injection robustness, where we try to also give a little cheat sheet for how long it should wait if it doesn't have enough hints on whether or not the message we sent is done or not. So in plain English, there are built-in pauses for everything from the startup of the web page to between the prompts to waiting for the answers to make sure that we're not injecting too early, which still happens right now because there are some edge cases we haven't accounted for. And the second one is the tool watches for page changes and it keeps retrying if things move and if it can re-inject itself if you switch pages or reloads, so it doesn't stop working. And again, we can make this a lot better, but out of the box in 12 hours, we were able to get it this far. Now to end things off, I'll show you how we could take this prompt, use it in something like Cursor out of the box without getting too complicated. And most importantly, how could you import the folder from Cursor, connect it to Chrome? So all you have to do is keep going back and forth and provide feedback, refresh the extension, and just see how it behaves until it gets to the point where you're happy with it. So when you go into something like Cursor for the first time, assuming you've set it up on your computer, and here I have the Pro mode, but you don't necessarily need the Pro mode. I just like to use things like Claude 4 quite a bit because it's a lot more efficient. And all you have to do is open a project, create a folder where this entire project will live, and then we can enter our prompt. So if we click on Open Project, I'll just select the folder. And we'll just create a new folder called Cursor Demo. I'll click on Open. It's an empty folder. And this is where all of our assets will live. And on the right-hand side here, just like ChatGPT, and if you're looking at this and you are more technically inclined, and you're saying, why is this guy a psychopath and does things in light mode? I'm doing this to make it less intimidating to people that are not technical. I'm personally a midnight blue kind of guy, but overall, you'll see if we extend this here, we'll have a left-hand side. This will have all the code that we generate. You don't have to touch yourself. It's just going to do things. And outside of you importing into Chrome extension, that's probably the most technical thing that you're going to have to do, outside of maybe opening that developer tools to give it feedback on what's happening or if any errors pop up. So if we go back to here and we copy this prompt, and I will use Claude 4 Opus Max, which you can only get on the Pro plan. You can use whatever you want. You can use Sonnet, whatever makes you happy. And I'll just say create this Chrome extension. Okay. And then I will paste this here. I'll say what the point is. The goal of this Chrome extension is that it helps us write and queue prompts to send on ChatGPT and Claude. Okay? And then when I send this over, will this work in one shot? There's like a 99.7% chance no. But at least we'll get some form of feedback and a folder set up that I'll show you how to actually import into Chrome. So we'll send this over and I'll wait for it to finish generating, which should be in a while because it's a very complex workflow. You'll see right here, Cursor's smart enough to start drafting a mental model or a diagram in this case of how this should all work and exactly where it should land. And after only 10 minutes, if you go to the very bottom here, you'll see the Chrome extension is complete and it lists out all the underlying files it came up with as well as what they mean in plain English. And then it gives you a summary of everything put together. And I'll show you now what we can do to import into Chrome. So if we go into Chrome, click on this little puzzle button, go on to Manage Extensions. All we have to do is click right here on Load Unpacked. And then you'll be able to click on this, pick a folder. And then from that folder, we can just click Select. And then in seconds, we now have this secondary promptific. And then just out of curiosity, I want to see if it pops up on the page. I'm not betting that it will, but if you click on refresh, by the way, every single time you make a change in Cursor or in natural language, again, no coding, you just tell it it's not working, it's doing this, it's not doing that. You just click reload and then you do a hard refresh on the page and you should be able to see the version of that app. Now in this case, I'm not sure if both versions of my app will conflict. So let me see if I have to enable it. I think, let me see right here. This is the new one. Right, so let's do a hard refresh and see if it appears anywhere on the page. Now it's not appearing anywhere, probably because it's competing with my existing one that I have already there. So what I'll do is I'll go to the extensions tab. I'm going to click this one off and just double check whether or not it appears on the page or whether it just created a pop-up. So it doesn't appear on the page. Let's see if we click on it. If you're wondering why it's a puzzle piece, we have to actually manufacture, create little icons. Usually I'll use ChatGPT 03 and say, here's an image of an icon I'm thinking about, or make an image and make it into these structures for a Chrome extension. Then I'll just download them and throw them into the icons folder. But you'll see here we have a prompt maker called Promptific. It looks like it has a queue function. Whether or not it works, I don't know. If I just say, I like Chrome extensions, and then is there a way for me to generate a prompt? Doesn't seem like it out of the box. If I do add prompt, it looks like it's doing something. If I click on import, export, I don't know if I can run this. But in general, this is a V0 with one prompt. And this makes things a lot easier because now you have a foundation and you can keep going back and forth versus using my caveman prompts that got me to the point I showed you, but after many hours. That's pretty much it. You'll not have to intervene here at all. Every single time you make a change, you can change the language models as you wish if you're finding success with ones versus others. But outside of that, these files will keep changing, and all you have to do is you keep going here, refreshing this Chrome extension until it behaves and operates the way you're looking for. And like I said before, this skill set won't just apply to ChatGPT or just Claude. You can use it for anything or any product where you feel like you wish there was a feature missing that might not be coming on the horizon, but you want to add it yourself. And a good example is I even created one for my Skool community, for my paid community members, where a lot of them were saying that they wanted a way to summarize all the mad scientist activity that I was doing. So you can see here, I created this Chrome extension called EA Copilot, which is actually published in the Chrome store, by the way. I'll make the link available in case you're in another Skool community that's not as good as ours, and you want to be able to summarize what's happening. And when you click on something like Daily Digest, it will go through the entire page of posts and summarize everything that's happening. So you don't get too much cognitive overload. You can search for specific things in the community, and it will give you a nice and tidy summary at the very bottom. And you can do things like translating the page in case you speak, let's say, Brazilian Portuguese or German, but you still want to be able to engage. You can see here you get a nice little summary. You can click on specific threads right here and then click on this button on the left-hand side that took me 7 hours to figure out, where it can go through an entire thread, summarize it, as well as create an audio file to help orate and give speech to the entire summary in case you're in a rush, but you want to catch up. So I'm basically, in this case, adding features that I always wish was available in Skool. You can do this for all kinds of applications. That's pretty much it. So I'll make this mega prompt available to you in the first link in the description below. But if you want access to my raw code that you can import immediately into Chrome and have it working out of the box, it'll be much better by the time you actually watch this recording. It'll be available solely to my exclusive community members. So if you want to check that out, check the second link in the description below. You won't regret it. I'll see you in the next one.